Hey everybody, welcome to Bound to Truth. This is Chris Lopez. Hope you're having a great Easter Sunday. Um, Finding those eggs, hopefully nothing creepier than than eggs. And I don't think eggs are creepy, but you never know. If you're out in the woods, you might find a bigger egg or a smaller egg or a chupacabra or Bigfoot. But anywho, hope everyone's having a great day, a great Easter, and want to let everybody know how they can reach me. They can reach me through Facebook, Bound to Truth, through Twitter as well, and also on YouTube. We're now on YouTube, like I talked about last podcast. If you have any questions, concerns, complaints, insults, bound to truth 34 at gmail.com. So today I have a great special guest who's local here in Washington. I had a great, wonderful conversation with him a couple weeks back. This is Shawn, who's going to talk about his Bigfoot experience. But before he talks about that, I want to have Shawn talk more about himself, who, what his life's about, what he does, a bit about him, so you guys get a feel of who he is and hopefully how this relates to the story, more of his personality and his experience. So Shawn, dude, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, Chris, well, it's really good to finally get to tie in with you like this. And I appreciate you going through the extra effort here to meet up with me. Okay.
Absolutely, man. Well, I appreciate you just to share your story um and just to share your experience. I like I told you before when we were talking, I had that 2 hour interview with the guy Randy Bauer back in Minnesota. I encourage you, if you haven't, pull him up. He's on TV shows and so forth, and he's pretty much got like the Skinwalker Ranch version of Bigfoot. It's crazy, but hopefully I maybe give you some answers, because I even talked a little bit about your experience. I didn't give your name on there as of yet in that podcast, but I even shared a bit of your experience and about like the growls and howls. But again, I don't want to jump in your story yet, but as an example of that. So before we get into this story about your experience, dude, tell us where you're about, man. Where you from, originated, dude, go off, man. Give us the origin
Right
story
on.
of the famous Shawn.
Yeah. Infamous anyway.
Hey,
Well,
okay, go for it.
I appreciate it there. I've been up in Washington, the Pacific Northwest for 24 years now. I came up into Washington on a wildfire through Bureau of Indian Affairs. 24 years ago, we were still um, pretty much doing things the old fashioned way out there, as far as just all you got to do is pass a pack test and sign on, and you could go travel the country as a wildland firefighter. So before that was kind of just a major venture as a young man, to be honest with you, Chris. I'm a former United States Marine. I did a stint as a repo man down in the Bay Area when the .com was crashing out there. So there were a lot of really cool cars that I got paid to go take. So that was a really cool time as a young man in my life. I've been a carny, and and I've done crazier things through the days. But I've currently spent most of my time now as a private investigator and work in security and enforcement out at one of the Live Nation venues here in Washington State. Uh, that being said, I just happened to have a season long stint or a journey as a logger, man, out on the reservation in northern Washington, the Colville Residential Liam, little inch town out there. And that kind of brings me to where my experience, right? My moment with what they would call a stick Indian out there on the reservation, um, kind of a limited, nothing to really brag about on my end there, Chris. But I've done a lot of varying things in my life, and this one little journey, as I happened to be pretending to be a logger that year, I happened to run into Bigfoot.
Okay, so before we go into the logging story, I got to say this first thing is thank you for your service as in the military. Actually, I didn't tell anybody this on the podcast. I actually tried to get in the Marines when I was younger, right before 9/11. Part of me is glad I didn't.
Wow.
All that happened. Basically, what happened is I passed all the physical tests and all that stuff, but during the training there, I had some back issues that came up, and they just said, you know how the Marines are. It's like you're either 100% or you're not 100%. And And but I just gotta say, it's no joke. Anybody who thinks that Marines are just a bunch of guys in the field doing their thing, shoot, it's I just being around those guys and the mental, just even the not just the physical, but the mental thing has just got to be um, uh, a very disciplined thing. And so I just want to say thank you for your service, man, on that. So definitely appreciate that. Um, and it's funny you talk about cardio. I'm kind of jealous, man. It sounds like you've had a motley crew of different interests and things that you've done. That's pretty cool. I wish I had that type of adventure, you know. But anywho, so let's get anything else before we start into the Bigfoot story. Anything else you want to say? Anything else you want to share? Additional?
Just happy to be able to finally tell this story. It's probably it's been a while, man. So I got to say it had to have been 05, 06
Okay.
when it happened, right? And so that we're almost 20 years
Right. Okay.
from this, and I've never really been able to sit down and kind of share it. So I just wanted to say thank you to you either before or after.
Absolutely. And then by the way, we'll talk afterwards to recap our conversations and everything, so forth. But yeah, man, listen, like I tell everybody, the platform is yours, brother. Take it away. Go for it.
Well, thank you kindly.
Mhm.
As I mentioned, man, I was in a wandering state of life and ended up with an opportunity to get out towards Inchelium on a logging job. And just so happened that I was dating at the time, her dad owned a logging company and been out cutting for Joe Pione, Pione Logging out there on the reservation. We were his contract crew, and we were your typical derelict crew, and I say that in jest of fashion, right? Because we had a one arm yarder operator, so a guy that's responsible for operating about 13 levers and 9 different foot pedals was missing an arm. So that was counted against us. I had myself out there. I've got neurological disorders, so I look goofy as can be walking back and forth, especially trying to carry anything. And we had a faller that was just as rugged as can be, too. So we were definitely just the misfit crew out there logging. But as it were, we were out there living on site, right? So we were about 4 miles or so from the landing on reservation land. I'm about, I want to say, 3.5 miles up Grizzly Mountain Road from Hall Creek area. So if anybody's familiar with the Colville Reservation, it's definitely a big plot of land, and part of it comes down 21 Highway 21 in Washington State, and it's definitely part of a well-maintained forestry land and forestry project. Might
So
even be. Go
so
ahead.
before we go further, so is that land is it owned privately per se, or is it more national forest owned by the government area where you're talking about?
So where I'm at specifically is owned by the Colville Reservation, which
Gotcha. I
would
see.
almost in the same way as like DNR or even the Forest Service, right? And their lands governed a little bit differently, of course, but it's their land, and they've sold the sets to whomever, right? And we were working as third party contractors for the logging company for the reservation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Got it now. Go. All right. Go ahead. Continue on.
So we're out there logging and just getting used to running a high line kind of on a skeleton crew. There were only just a few of us out there. I always giggle at the axemen on TV and stuff that were crying when they got 6 or 8 people over the hillside grabbing these chokers and logs, and I'm doing it by myself, right? So anyhow, the day comes, we're supposed to get paid, and the owner of the company doesn't have our paycheck. Now there's all kinds of variances, so I'm not going to spout any absurdities, we'll say, as to why I didn't get paid. But payday didn't come, and
Oh man. Oh gosh. Yeah, that sucks.
I happen to be broke, and I happen to need propane because we're living out in the woods. and we could have, used some food or, something to eat. We were counting on payday, living kind of paycheck to paycheck as we got started out there. Well, choice is made that no money's going to be there, so I'm going to have to at least take a wander out in the woods and go find myself something to eat with this 22. I'm thinking small game. There's plenty of squirrel, grouse. There's going to be something out and about that we can eat. We're not going to starve. I'll provide. I had a couple dogs, and I think we even had a cat with us out there. As I go walking from camp, these dogs are following me and they're kind of scaring everything up. And I was headed down the creek, so down Hall Creek, right? I figure the dogs are going to make a disaster of this hunting idea because they're not exactly anything more than a pet. Let's hike back, drop the dogs off, and then go up Hall Creek and see what I can find. So it takes a few minutes to get that done, and I start heading up creek. Grizzly Mountain Road runs right alongside the camp. So I'm 15 yards to the left side of the road, walking up Hall Creek. I start walking up the road, just dilly dallying. I know I'm going to come across something, and it's just going to be, thank you for being here. I'm going to eat this with my family tonight. At least we won't have to worry about that. And to be honest, I'm really in a mental state of I just want to get this over with so I
Losing you, losing you.
can up the creek. For no reason, I just make a 90 pivot to the right and start heading across Grizzly Mountain Road to get to the other side. I've never really wandered out that way. We never really left camp, didn't really have to. Just as I cross Grizzly Mountain Road, as I look ahead of me, there's probably a 15 to 18-foot tall hillside, not a berm from the road, like the road still crossed, and then across the road, it just climbed into a hill about that tall. And as my eyes go from the base of the hill up to the top of this hill, I'm looking for something to shoot, right? I want some food. I notice at the very top of this hill, that registers in my mind instantly. The first thought is that's the reddest deer I've ever seen. So I initially had processed that there was a deer standing on the opposite side of the hill, and I could just see its back, I guess would be the way to put it, right?
Yeah. So before you continue on, when you saw this thought it was a deer, this big deer, and the 22 you had, did you think it might take it down with the arsenal you had? You think you're like, okay, this is a great opportunity, or were you just like, oh, it's just a deer there? Like,
Oh,
were you
not at all. I was not in any position, Chris, set up to butcher and manage a deer out in the woods. We were definitely living in a camper and just kind of almost glamping as loggers, even though they were microwave type burritos and top ramen.
right?
But I was definitely not prepared, even at that moment with a 22, especially to take out any deer. So I wasn't going to shoot any big game at all. I was looking for something small, field strip, and throw in a pot that night.
So since you weren't planning to hunt that, you spotted this quote deer at that time. How far do you think it was from you? Like feet, yards? Can you any potential description on like how close it was to you?
Yes, so I've made it across the road. So I'm on the right shoulder of the road, moving towards this hill. From my foot to the top of that hill was less than 50 yards.
Wow, that's close.
So it was literally enough to be able to look and identify that I'm seeing, at the very least, fur and color. Does that make sense? If there
It
were
does. It does.
if there was a face actually looking at me, I could have seen at least the features of a face. I probably wouldn't have seen like he had a mole on his cheek, but I was close enough to at least be able to see that there was a living creature there, and it was now moving.
So after spotting this this entity, animal, whatever you want to call it, um, were you kind of like ready to move on from what you're spotting, or was it just enough curiosity to keep an eye on what you're seeing? Right, like because I know you're out there hunting for small game, so it wasn't like oh, there's a deer, I'm gonna keep moving forward. Was or it just capture your curiosity, like, dude, what is that? Like that's a big buck or big deer.
So initially, it just totally captured my attention. The moment I see this thing, as I'm looking at it and it's registering, there's a big deer on the other side of that hill. All of a sudden, this big deer is standing up. Right? So what looked like, maybe a foot over the top of this hillside is now becoming, from my view, it looked like it went from where it was at least another foot and a half or more taller as it stood, almost as if it was crouched at that hilltop and just kind of looking over the hill at our camp. It was right next to our camp.
So when you start seeing it stand, and how tall are you, by the way, again?
So I'm 6 foot even.
Okay, and how now you being 6 foot even, you're a tall guy. This thing, this entity, this beast seemed pretty tall, I'm sure. What would you guess potentially the height? I know it's uphill in a way, but what do you think?
Honestly, as it stood in my view, its shoulders had to be another foot taller than me, just its shoulders alone. So, and then it would still have the height of its neck and head if it was standing straight up. Because this creature had its head down looking over the hill and instantly turned to its left and was standing up and walking away from me on the other side of the hill at the same time.
Now, when it started to stand and do its thing, do you think you caught it off guard, or do you think it was watching you?
I think it was definitely watching me, but I don't think it had any clue I was going to turn and start walking directly towards it. The moment it got up and turned away, it just let out a howl like a blood curdling. I can't even explain it. I've never heard it in nature before. And as it howled, it slapped a tree to its right going down the hill.
All right, so with that howl happening, what did it do to you besides hearing it? Did it do anything physically to you? Did it knock you, like, kind of like, I would say, uh like, cause any vision impairment, headaches, any, like, what was it doing physically when you're hearing this, besides hearing it? What did it do physically? Did anything at all?
This is a trip, Chris, because I've done some wild stuff, right? I've been bouncing in bars since I was 16. I've been, like I was said before, the repo work and doing fighting fires and such. So I'm a guy that kind of goes towards those type of events in life, right? Where most
You're
people
not
run
a
away.
you're not a flight guy. You're a fight guy. You're like, I'm going towards the danger. I'm gonna see what's up. It's like that's your natural instinct. You're a Marine,
I'm going
right?
to investigate, right? Not
Right. Yeah.
necessarily fight, but I'm going to investigate.
Right.
And what
Okay.
was really weird was the moment that noise, so the combination of the howl and the smack on the tree, you ever remember like they would talk about Jordan being in the zone, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. That
Uh,
killer instinct. Like you that. When I say killer instinct, I mean you're straight on focus. Nothing's distracting. You have an agenda. You have an attempt. Yeah, like attempt. Yeah. Go ahead.
so like time slows down,
Right.
right?
Right.
And it was really strange, Chris, because the instance had already really happened. So it's all this, holy cow, it's the biggest deer I've ever seen. It's standing up, it wallops the tree, it hollers, and it's gone. And I'm like literally standing there where it felt like that, as fast as I just spoke it to you, it happened. But it felt like I had been standing there for at least a minute, right? At least just trying to figure things out. I get not so much dizzy or taken away, but definitely there's nothing else around me all of a sudden. It was just the moment that noise came out of his mouth, I was fine tuned to that position. And I don't want to say tunnel vision because that would imply like I was trying to faint or something like that. But I definitely didn't see anything other than the basket, right? Or the target or I was just in that high focus mode for no reason. And to end it, as it faded out and I kind of grasped myself back to reality, which is very strange. I look to my left 15 feet in front of me, and there's a grouse sitting there, man. Like it wasn't there when I walked up to if it might have been because grouse can hide, you know. And I feel the way I've grown up in life, I was kind of led like my whole every instinct said turn right, walk up this way. Boom, here's a grouse, silly. Take the grouse, you know. And it just happened as you asked, you know, was this guy watching me? I think I interrupted that entity watching my camp. I don't know what went beyond that hill. I didn't have the guts to go look, man. I'm not trying to claim that I'm a real ballsy individual. I
Right.
wish I had, honestly,
To
so I
see
could
to
have
see
some
what it was
fuzz.
to see what it was doing. What it was
Just as
yeah.
something, because there would have been, you know, a padded area if he had been sitting there actually watching. Maybe he was just hiking over the hill and we just happened to meet each other at the same time. So we really spooked one another. You know, just one of those Spidey moments where everybody's pointing at the other one. You know, like
That's a great description. That's pretty funny
like
actually.
holy cow.
So
But
yeah.
just wild to me.
So when that happened and you found your prey, right? You saw it walk off, you said, right?
Yeah.
So describe that. It walked off, and then what happened? It walked off, and did it just disappear and vanish in a way, or like what, or just walk off in the brushes? What happened after that?
You know, it's really weird that you asked that because there was no other. I'm in the woods, man. Like I'm in the woods. I'm not in a park setting and an RV, but we're out in the woods. There was no other sound of that creature after that moment. So the moment that creature made that holler and walloped the tree, I didn't hear another twig break. I didn't hear, you know, branches bend. I didn't hear creatures flutter off that it had scared as it was moving. It was just gone.
So after that, what was your after that experience? What were your thoughts in that moment? And like was it fear? Was it shock? Was it like did I just saw what I saw? Like what was going on?
You know, I'd kind of grown up with knowledge of a stick Indian or Bigfoot or Sasquatch, and it was almost an instant confirmation that that's what it was. And I'm going to be honest, anything after that was really like, I'm hungry, man. I'm going to go field strip this grouse and make sure that the girl and I have something to eat for the night. But I was more or less convinced from the howl and the wallop on the tree that it most definitely wasn't a deer. This was, and at least, if anything, man, there was somebody out there camping, right? And because we're on the reservation, lots of hooting and hollering going on out there, right? And that was a little odd. But as I show up to work the next morning, we have a few of my cousins on the crew out there, and I start to communicate before going over the landing what happened, you know, telling them the same story I tell you the same way, and their eyes get really big and they're looking at me and looking at one another. And that was a stick Indian. Okay, you guys mean Sasquatch, right? Like a big, yeah, man. That's one of our, you know, a cousin out there. What's he watching me for? And I couldn't get an answer. So I don't know. I've never felt that especially at that moment, I never felt that there was any threat. There had never been anything come at us. Like people talk about rocks being thrown at them and different guttural growls and stuff to kind of be territorial and stay away. I never felt any of that. We never had any of that. We had more of an experience with mountain lions scaring the heck out of us for claiming their territory than we did with anything else. So I definitely think that this stick Indian was just either A, watching us, right? Or B, we had just met each other at a midpoint on this trail and it was an instant surprise. So he ducked down with, oh shit,
Right,
and
right,
I stopped, going, whoa, what is that?
right. So before I get to more questions, regards to, that experience, did you see any facial features potentially at all besides its body, or was it just so quick and so like just like you said in the zone? What can you share on that?
So not that I can recognize for a facial feature at all. It literally in my mind, I'm picture he was eye level at the crest of the hill. And as he saw me, he's ducking like in that oh man moment and turning. So as what I see the most of would have been the top of his head and then his right shoulder and his backside on the right side because he's standing up, turning to his left. Does that make sense? So that
That
shoulder,
no, that does. Any color of the eyes, muscular, what would you say?
I would say almost thin haired rather than fully covered in fur. Like you could almost see the skin underneath parts of it, and way broader shoulders than I've ever seen. I mean, there's some football players out there I've seen with some pretty broad shoulders, but I couldn't get enough detail other than that. And it moved quick, man. It really did. The way it stood up and got out of the way still tells me that it wasn't there to be an aggressive presence, right?
Right, right. So yeah, wow. So with that experience, do you think that if it wanted to hurt you, it could have? And with the weapon that you had, do you think it could have hurt it or stopped it? Like, what do you like? Just looking at it and like, do you think it was a pretty like this is a strong dude, like strong beast?
That thing would have probably shredded me in half if it could have. The way it thumped that tree would, I mean, it sounded hard enough to be enough for a human to break his hand, right? It was literally a loud enough thump. It almost sounded like a machine. And that guttural growl, I can't pull in enough air to do that. So he's a big dude, man. That was a big creature.
So it definitely can echo. Now, well, you also like work in the Live Nation. I'm sure it's like, dude, no singer can do this. this is this
Right.
this is a death metal band's dream to have this voice. Anyways, um, so after that experience, after that moment, when you went back, I know you talked about how you talked to your boys at the logging camp afterwards about it. Did you talk to your girlfriend at that time, or you just kind of like let it be and just like, hey, we got food?
You know, I did mention it to her, but it was just kind of more of the hey, we got food. We were really counting on payday that day to kind of get that one good Friday meal in your belly, and relax for the weekend.
Okay. Okay, cool. So obviously you said it's been years, it's been almost 20 years, right? Have you besides the, mentioned slightly to the girlfriend at the time and to the loggers, have you talked to anybody else about this, or has this ever came up, or like just curious, have you ever shared the story over the years with people? Like who did like this like did you talk to somebody, or did it happen where a conversation came from someone else and you kind of just, oh, I'll share my experience?
If I was lucky enough to run into somebody else that had an experience with a stick Indian or Sasquatch or Bigfoot, I would offer to share my story too, which is very few and far between, right? I think maybe three times tops. But I never really told the story until today, honestly. And I've had one other group reach out in the last couple months that would like to hear it as well. But it's I don't want to say so much a stigma on it, but it's not something that's just part of conversation, which is it's kind of wild because I don't want to say it's the same stick Indian I saw down in Inchelium, but if you look at Sherman Pass cameras up there, they've actually captured one on their summit camera. So
Wow.
they know it exists. You know what I'm saying? Is what
Right.
I'm getting at. It's hard. It's for some reason for it to still be hard to kind of communicate about it or share the experience, even though the proof is kind of out there, I guess, right? To say
Right.
it,
Right.
but yeah, Chris, it's hard for me to just have that part of the conversation. I, Nobody really takes it seriously. To be honest with you, unless they've had some sort of experience about it before or have an interest in it. And the interest is the hardest thing to find.
So when you have these conversations with these people, have you ran into people who also had similar experiences, the experience, not just like, oh, we caught it on our camera, but like anybody you talked to over the years are like, dude, I had experience like similar to yours in a way. Anybody have you met during the years?
So I've got a fraternal brother that does like fishing guides and stuff in the like the Green River area and over on the west side. I'll probably get the locations wrong. I apologize. But Wild Bill would tell a story about him floating certain sections of his guide river, right, where he would work and having rocks thrown at him. And those rocks would be followed by the guttural howl. So that was something that kind of him and I would. Did it sound like it still makes my hair stand up? Yes, it does.
Oh, like I said, I can't imagine. I've seen plenty of film on YouTube and other stuff where um, there's something out there, but I don't have the experience like you did, the emotional, I mean, I don't want to say the word trauma. Maybe that is the right word. Just the after effect of it, right? So what is it? What do you think over the years? Like I said, you've been a Marine. You've done the Live Nation shows. You're private investigative. You're a guy who's been in danger. What would you say when it comes to this? Do you think anything else has topped that when it comes to feeling that moment of like, I'm not saying you were in danger, but would you say this has been the most extraordinary experience compared to other things you've been in your life per se in a way, or no?
Well, I mean, it definitely matches up to a lot of it, and I've done some crazy stuff, right? But nothing,
Dude, I'm a musician. Who hasn't, brother? Yeah.
nothing stopped me in my tracks before.
Yeah.
And that creature definitely stopped me in my tracks, and I wasn't even trying to approach it, you know what I'm saying? So it's getaway, it's maneuvers to get away from me was just enough to shut me down. And it really it still strikes me as interesting that it hollers, wallops a tree, and is gone. Like there's not even, it would have to be a clear cut path for that creature to make it all the way back the backside of that hill to wherever it was going, to not crack a limb, right? To not make some kind of exiting sounds.
Well, exactly. Because I mean, if we're walking off trail, right? I mean, I mean, like I've walked off trail in woods before, and there's always going to be a crack and walk and everything and so forth, some type of noise and all that jazz. So, here's my question to you: when you've shared your experience, do you think it's something that is more natural and like it's like part of that quote evolution, right? Like how like hey, we came from apes and here we are here, or do you think it's something else world? And I'm not saying alien, maybe interdimensional. What are your thoughts on that? Have you talked to me about that? The theories of the origin of this entity that you experienced.
Well, for me, I would have to say this is probably a missing link of some form, some sort. There's too many continuous decades of proof that it exists. And then you really start to boil back stories of like the red-headed giants down in Nevada, right? And different entities that were considered giants through storytellings and traditions around the world, not just North America.
No, absolutely. The redheaded giants. I mean, I did an episode with my brother regarding Nephilims, right? And there's a story not just here in America, than Native America, but stories across down even South America, right? About and these are different tribes, right? And tribes are going to have their own beliefs, right? They're going to have different beliefs about different things, but the story stays the same. Embracing these red-headed giants. Some of them they say they were pale, right? And I'm not sure if they're Nephilim, not. I'm not sure they're connected with Bigfoot, but the story stays the same. You know, I live here in Washington where I'm right next to a res area, and they have like Bigfoot stuff all over the place.
Right.
It's I want when I say insane, not because it's crazy that they believe it. It's just like for a culture that had tribes that had such different beliefs, they have the same story. You know, so there's something going on. There's the same experience per se, or your or visual experience of what they're seeing. And when I was talking with Randy, the guy back in Minnesota, he's got. I got if it's cool, I want to connect you guys because I think you guys will hit it off
That'd be
very well. He's
great.
he's a legit dude. This guy is awesome, big heart, big talker. Love this guy. And he said that he saw them walking through portals, and which is interesting.
Wow.
And because that's what I was asking, did you see it disappear or walk off, right? But you're saying it's just gone, right? And he talked about the experience that they're very interdimensional type of things, and he has really strong communication with them. And he actually has a strong Facebook page, which I'll be glad to share that later on this evening to his link regarding his Bigfoot. He's got photos and everything. It's insane. And but so with that experience that you had, has it caused any potential trauma in a way, or has it caused anything? Like I know you talked about still makes your hair stand up. Does that still have that effect today to you?
Oh, every time I share this story, I almost get that same feeling. So what it has caused though is a spark of curiosity, Chris. I really the reason why I reached out to you was to be able to share the story one, but a to network and start to really kind of um, do some more research. I don't want to call it hunting or but actually find some
Right,
people that would
right.
be really interested in going back to the area and looking around to do some type of research. And because like humans, man, it's going to propagate. If we were left out in the woods and our hair to grow and all of a sudden become furry and whatnot, we'd probably match right up to looking like a stick Indian. So they're going to be out there still, and it'd be fun to continue an investigation.
No, absolutely. I mean, and there and it's funny when I've and I'm grateful you reached out. It's funny when I started this podcast, I was looking, I'm from California, right? And Central California, farm town. And when I moved up here, I'm thinking, okay, Bigfoot, aliens, there's so much rich history here, right? So I'm thinking it's easy to pull stuff online, like, that's public knowledge, brother, it's not. It's hard. What
Very hard.
It's very hard, and you've confirmed it with a bunch of others. By the way, and I'll talk a little more offline. Um, that when I did my Facebook like post with Bigfoot, I did another one regarding alien abductions, which I'll talk to you offline about because that's some crazy stuff. Um, a lot of people don't talk about it because of afraid of ridicule, afraid of judgment. They're thinking they're crazy, and there's stuff that people tell me here in my own backyard, things are going on, and I've never fully explored that. And it's funny. It's like, well, the reason there is a lot going on, but it's not public knowledge. You have to actually reach out, and hopefully people will come out and talk, and they feel comfortable. Great, And it's funny when I put the podcast out, I tell people I was like, we can talk and chat like you and I did, but I always ask, are you comfortable going on a podcast? Do you want to keep it anonymous? Do you want to do more of a give me a story and I share it for you type of thing, because there is that stigma, right? And how I tell people is like, I don't think people are crazy. I just don't think it works with the narrative of what the powers that be like, you know. And like I shared my last podcast, I did one on the area school incident. Well, it's crazy that people believe in Bigfoot or aliens and all this stuff in their experience, but when it comes to believing in God, and I'm not trying to be blasphemous, I'm a raised Catholic, dude, you know. But it's like, have I seen God? No. Have I felt like I experienced God? Yes. Right. I've all those things, but it's not crazy. That's part of the narrative, right? Um, so do you think that, and this is going on more a conspiracy question, and do you think that with all the government owned woods and everything, or even a native, do you think that these people know that they exist and they just don't want to talk about it in a way? Or do you, and if they don't, why wouldn't they talk about that?
Well, first off, I got to say, Chris, it's because of people like you that ask us is the reason why you'll learn, right? Or anybody would learn. So thank you for being brave enough to ask to put the first, because sometimes that's all it takes. I would say, well, there definitely are known on all the lands, whether it be reservation land, whether it be government land. They have to know. I would say some of the selection of what would be we would call Forest Service land, right? Wildlife refuge land. Some of the designations I think may have been based on um, habitat, honestly, or at least known habitat, right? Or known to be. Um, a lot of people in the country have never really flown over this country to see how much open land there really is, how much undeveloped and unexplored land there really is. And there tends to be a guide through the genetics of this creature that shows that it's not just Pacific Northwest. Does that make sense? Like it's
Yeah.
genetically diverse through the world, so that
Well,
the Yetis,
they're no diverse than what we are, right? You know,
correct,
we all have the same organs, we all bleed the same way, but we're all genetically different. Like like example, you got China. Well, I don't like Chinese, but are they a human being? Yes, right. We still have the same organs, we still have all the DNA and all that stuff. Um, one of my thoughts is why wouldn't they talk about this into me? Is if if it is, if it's not interdimensional and it's a part of evolution, why wouldn't they talk about that? Is it because it can interrupt the science behind what we believe? I'm just curious, like, why would they not introduce? Because we're always discovering species every day, and it gets talked about that, but why not this?
right? And I would say honestly, it's one of the few things that they've protected from being hunted. In reality, if there was another creature promoted out there that was kind of like hunting a human, right? I think people would probably. I enjoy hunting human as a bail enforcement agent, right? I enjoy hunting humans. I enjoy the the way a human being reacts and responds to the threat, so I think maybe a wise decision was kind of made a long time ago, so because as humans as a whole, we'd be really prone to just wipe it out, man, or try to make it our own,
Yeah, that's
right?
true. That's true too. I mean, being from California, we have the grizzly bear on our flag, but there's no grizzlies anymore, right?
Right.
And here's an interesting fact I'll share with you that maybe you did know or you didn't know, is that gorillas were discovered to be real late 1800s. And and that's and here's why I'm bringing that up, because back then, like in the European world, they heard the theories about gorillas and these giant, monkey like beings, right? And people thought that it was like the same thing like a Bigfoot until somebody shot one and brought it back. And now we have gorillas. And it's not even 2 centuries old. And so I'm wondering if that's kind of in that same direction, that same thing. It's like it's just it's there. It just hasn't been discovered officially yet publicly, but we know it's there. But I think that's kind of interesting, and I think that and you can tell me this too. I think they're very intelligent. I think into a human intellect or even more. But what are your thoughts on that?
I think it would have to be at human intellect or better the way that creature was aware of me, watching me approach and reacting the way it did. Right. So if you spook most wild creatures, they're going to give that totally defensive kind of flight act,
A step back in a way.
usually.
Yeah.
Right. And then like try to present themselves before they choose to necessarily not a lot of prey animals run at deer run scatter at snap twigs and stuff, but there'd be some type of wild nature to it. This definitely appeared to be more of an emotional response, which leads me to believe cohesive thought.
So would you ever want to have this experience again? Would you be open to that? Like, would you be like, hey, I'm open to have this experience again, or is it something that's like I don't ever want to have this experience again? But and when I say that, because it sounds like besides its growl and that moment of like, holy crap, it wasn't threatening you, but would you be open to have that experience again?
Most definitely. I wouldn't subject anybody to the fear, and you had the right word with traumatic incident, right? I wouldn't really purposely subject somebody to that part of it, but the act of going out and doing further research really intrigues me, Chris, and it's something that I would be willing to put myself back into that position, emotionally or otherwise, to see if I could get better input, better research.
Yeah, and it sounds like it wouldn't destroy your world. Like, you know how we were raised and everything what we believe in. It sounds like it's like, no, this world is has more to discover, and I'm curious about it. It sounds like that's kind of like your thing. Like I'm curious to know more about the existence of this being. It sounds like, you know.
And maybe a deeper dive into that realm of um are they actual entities? Are they in control of certain things out here? Do they travel differently than we might, right? Are they in a different even mental plane than we are? Do they have to just grunt and groan at us because we can't understand
Well,
even,
and
where
that's
they're at?
you made a great point because, like, example, I have 4 cats, dude. Right? You know when cats meow, they usually do that when they're young. They meow at us because that's the only way that they know how we communicate.
Right.
Usually cats when they're around other cats, they don't do that really. They just it's like there's this instinct. And that's a possibility too, where that there is such a higher level of a different way of communication. I'm not saying telepathy, but Randy Bauer, who I was telling you about, said they do what's called mind speak, which they can actually hear him talk and they're speaking to him. And like I said, this guy's legit. He's not crazy. But I'm wondering if that type of level too. Um, but that's a really good point of what you're bringing on top of that and so forth. Have you ever since that the experience that you had, and I know it's been almost 20 years, have you have you ever attempted to personally like go out purpose for the purpose of trying to search it, or have you like gone camping at times like, hey, maybe I'll run into one again, maybe not, like what's been like, what's your thoughts on that?
So ever since then, I've always had it in the back of my mind that they're out there and they're just a few yards away. Um, I can't tell you that I've gone hunting for them, but I've definitely any other time I went back in the woods, it was like going into the woods with a bear. You know there's going to be bear out there, man, so you just got to kind of respond and react at the moment when it happens, you know. So it was just something. You're right. It's not going to destroy my world. It's just been added to what exists out there for me, and I would be blessed to come across some more proof, another example.
So it sounds like it's just another exciting opportunity to add to your world life experience, being a Marine, being a detective per se, being, you know, all those things, like another feather in the cap. It sounds like it's something that you would just love to explore and just have that open mind to see, like inquisitiveness. Like, I have more questions about it. What is it? You know, like, you know, does it talk? Does it communicate? Does it, where are they from? Type of thing. Is that kind of that where you're coming from?
Yeah, I want to take Bigfoot to a concert. You know what I mean?
Dude,
I
that
want to
would,
see. I want to see. Did you respond to music the same way? Vibrations? Is there? Are
you,
we
you,
the same type of like guttural, instinctive beings when it comes
you
to rhythm and motion?
you know what's funny? Randy mentioned something about that with frequency, and he's a musician too, by the way. Okay, it's funny. There's a synchronicity going on, and I told Randy, I says, Randy, I says, I want to give you a challenge. I was like, have speakers out and play your songs. See what happens. See what kind of response it comes to.
Yeah.
What type of frequency, right? But I can definitely see Bigfoot playing drums for sure. You know, you might need to be very steel based. You know, I'm not sure if they're going to be very jazz friendly playing, but yeah, yeah, I think that's really cool, man. Anything additional you wanna add to the story? You want to share for people, or thoughts about, like, you know, hey, you know, any advice or anything you want to share with people, what they should do, or how to embrace this topic?
You'd have better chance at advice, but I would share that we're growing into an age where people are given platforms to share this information, i.e., Facebook, Twitter. And I would say if you have something to share, to go ahead and share it on those platforms. And remember not to just dive into the comments because you've got 1,000 people or more responded to something, and 10% of them are going to be jerks anyway. Right. So if you're given a platform and feel comfortable, you should probably take advantage of these platforms. It's been beneficial to me. 20 years of bottling something up, man, that doesn't really work well. You really want to be able to share, as simple as that story is, Chris. I'm sorry it's not an Emmy winner or anything.
No, no, but you know what? But the experience for you, Shawn, is that it's real. You know,
Very real.
and that's the thing. It may sound, I've heard these stories many times, right? And so forth. Like, you know, you read about it, you watch on YouTube. My thing is, like, I like to go deeper besides what the what you've seen and experience, but to know the emotional and traumatic effects, because there's people out there who don't want to share this. Like, example, there's people out there who've had some bad experiences that we know in the narrative when it comes to crimes that happen to them, right? And all that stuff. But and that's still hard for them to share. When something like this, where it's not in that narrative of spectrum in our world, I can't imagine what that feels like, not to be able to share that, or maybe think, am I crazy, or what's going on with this and that, you know? And I always want people to encourage to share that, because it's something that I think is very healthy. I think it's very therapeutic. I think when you get it out, it makes yourself better. I think it helps your relationships around you better, type of thing. And because there's a sense of acceptance. That's my thought.
Well, and you're promoting it with the platform,
Yeah.
right? And there's nothing worse than being in a group, 20 people, and everybody's laughing, telling stories, and you tell your stick Indian story, and the whole room goes quiet.
Uh,
You
no,
know?
no, yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. Like I think I shared this before with you. but I'm not here to make money off it. I'm not here to do that. I have a, I'm happy with what I have and everything. This is definitely a passion of mine. Because I've always been inquisitive about things like this, UFOs, Bigfoot, cryptozoology, paranormal for many years since I was 8, and I was in Catholic school, so I don't know how that happened, but but I do believe that people deserve to have a platform to be heard. And I don't care if it's a small story or a long story. I think as a human being, it's good to have people to share those things, to get it out and feel supported, to feel loved, to feel accepted. I think that's so important. And when people do that more, the world's a better place. That's
Much
that's my
better.
that's my sense, man. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, no, you're correct, man. And again, you're offering it there, and it's not like a hook and sinker type thing, right? You're offering it there, and you're pursuing it. And you showed that with me this week, man. I must apologize for Friday. I'm
Oh,
busy down here at the venue, and I spaced on things.
don't even worry about that, man. I was just when that happened, I was like, it's okay. He'll reach back out to me. I was like, it's all good. Because me, I'm not the person to go and just like I want to force people. I'm a very ambitious person when it comes to my job and what I do, but I always make sure that it's done for the right reasons and that it's a benefit for both parties. So I was like, yeah, he'll reach back out to me. We'll figure it out. I was just like, dude, I get it, man. We got a lot of things going on in our lives. There's things I've spaced down on other people, So hey, great, you gotta give grace to people because hey, I would like the grace back. So don't even wasn't even a problem, brother. You're good, dude.
Well, copy that. Well, thank you again, Chris, for this at least chance, right?
Yeah.
And hopefully people will reach out if they desire. And if somebody wants to put a group together, man, and we start going looking up in the reservations up north again, let's do it, bud. I'd be happy to plan something.
Well, like I said, my dad's gonna be coming up late May, or it's gonna be, was it the Memorial? Is it Memorial? I always mix this. Is it Memorial Weekend or Labor Day? No, Labor Day weekend's in September, so I think it's Memorial Weekend that May. So I was gonna reach out to you and have my dad and I go out to see you, hang out, we'll connect and so forth, and have some fun, get to know each other more on a personal level, and hey, we'll see where that goes. On top of that, for sure, for sure, because it gives me a reason to ride my Harley out there. So
There you go.
you know, so um, before we end the show, like I said, Shawn, we'll talk offline. So stay on after I end this. But everybody, if any guys want to reach out to Shawn, let me know. I'll be glad to connect you with Shawn and to share more of his experience and have a more of a better, stronger global community in regards to this subject because it is real. It is a real thing. And if you have any questions, like I talked before, boundedtruth34@gmail.com. You can please subscribe on Spotify, Bound to Truth, as well as YouTube, and then also on X. Please definitely reach out. And yeah, and Brandy, again, thank you very much. Stay online afterwards, but thank you very much for your experience, buddy. Very blessed, and I'm honored for you to share this as well as the audience, man. Thank you.
Happy to share it with you and your friends out there, and look forward to seeing some of you guys down here at the gorge.
Awesome, man. Take care. We'll connect soon. Hang on.